One. All right. Welcome everyone to the Metro Council Executive Committee meeting. Today is March the 30th. It's 4:01 p.m. We've got this one scheduled for an hour and a half because we have a presentation that'll take some time at the end. But we do have a number of different things to run through at the very beginning. Mr. Cooper, do we need any type of notice or anything read on this one? I know we don't necessarily take any action. Are we okay? He is getting on and he's shaking his head. I think.
I'm sorry. I think we could just get a simple motion stating that this is necessary, for the good of the people, just to cover us.
All right, so I'm looking at Councilmember Nash is going to make that motion, and Councilmember Allen has seconded for the good of the people. All those in favor say aye.
Second. Aye.
You don't want me to read the motion?
No, you don't have to read the motion.
Okay.
And opposed, no. And Mr. Cooper has just read everybody's names, and everybody's good with proceeding ahead. We're good. All right, so we've got several things to cover before we get to that software presentation. So let's just start by saying, well, first of all, I hope everybody is good and safe. We've been sending out emails when we've gotten them, thanks to Office of Emergency Management. If something is necessary, you can let me know. You can certainly send it to, I think her name was Kelly, at the Office of Emergency Management. You can get in touch with Chief Swan. I know there were questions about the water department. You can get in touch with Mr. Honeysucker. If you have any problems whatsoever, you can certainly let me know or Mr. Cooper know. We can get you to the right places. But it's been obviously quite a year, and these floods didn't help. And then obviously I just sent out something that I got from TEMA that indicates there's more rain that's supposed to be coming this way tonight. So everybody be very, very safe and take care of your neighbors and yourself. All right. All right. So let's get into the nature of the meeting, which is with the pandemic, with that light getting brighter at the end of the tunnel, with more people being inoculated. Our guess is that, without knowing for sure, is that the governor's executive order that allowed us to continue to meet virtually is probably going to end at the end of April, which means that we're going to have to come back live and physically. So for the purposes of April, we will be meeting virtually. We'll be in the courthouse, in the chamber on Tuesday. I will, and Mr. Cooper will be, but we'll still be meeting virtually through the month of April. But then the first meeting in May, we're going to have it at the Music City Center. We had to go ahead and make that determination because we had to get notices out about the public hearing. I think the thought was that obviously everybody can be inoculated sometime in April. If you get it taken care of in April, there's that either a 2-week period. Now I've heard it may be just 7 days. I'm not sure exactly what's right. I heard 7 days yesterday, where after the second vaccine, you're supposed to obviously be careful. And then you've got hopefully everything you need in place through the inoculations to be safe from COVID. So we thought we would extend and do the first meeting in May at the Music City Center. But after that, again, this is assuming that the governor's executive order doesn't extend it or nothing else comes through to extend it. The question to you all was, what do you think? Do you want to try to stay in the Music City Center for a couple of months? Is it time to get back to the chamber? What are your thoughts on it? We can do a couple of different things, but I thought I would open it up to you all. So Councilman Weathers looks like he was getting ready to push his button. Did you have a comment, or were you just moving around with the cat?
My cat's squirming.
Oh, your cat is squirming. Okay. Councilmember Allen, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. And one question is, how much of the general population do we think will be inoculated at that point? And is there an issue with keeping them properly spaced, or can we continue with the chairs out in the foyer like we did, just to enable people to still come to a public meeting, but be able to keep the distance apart until the whole general population is vaccinated?
Well, it's a good question. So I'm not sure how many will be inoculated by then. I know what the numbers seem to indicate with the state. At least last Friday, we were around 22, 23%. I'm not sure what they are in Davidson County, but the idea would be, we're probably going to have to be, we're going to have to probably be someplace. Music City Center, obviously they had a system to allow people to come in, keep them separate, so forth, and then keep them safely apart within the center. Now, Berkeley, your point's well made, and we're going to talk about the budget here in a little bit, but obviously the first public hearing in June is a public hearing on the budget. And so we may have lots of people coming in. And if that's the case, it seems, and I'm not sure if Rosie is on this call, but Mr. Cooper may know, I think we're good. I think the Music City Center said we were good. If we wanted to be, we could stay there through May and June.
Yeah, that's what Rosie told me.
Okay. That was my other question.
So one of the questions would be, do you want to stay? Does that make sense? Do y'all want to stay in the Music City Center, particularly during the budget discussions, because we may have lots of people coming in? Do you want to stay in the Music City Center through June? Obviously, the President Biden has said that he's hoping that July 4th is not only Independence Day, but also, the day that we can sort of celebrate that people have been vaccinated. Hopefully we're kind of not necessarily at the end of it, but so much closer than we are, even right now. So what do you all think about staying in the Music City Center at least through the end of June? I see a couple of fingers up. Anybody have any problems with that? Assuming that we can get that worked out. It sounds like we were good to do it anyway. And then we would watch it and see whether we're ready to come back into the chamber maybe the first part of July. We'll watch the numbers. Obviously, Councilmember Allen, I think your point's well taken. See kind of where we are, see if there's been any setbacks. We can always change. But at least through the month of June, we would go to the Music City Center. Anybody have any problems with that? Okay, I'm looking. I don't see anybody's hands up. Okay. Well, so we'll get in touch with Charles Starks over at the Music City Center, and we will plan to have our council meetings held that way physically during the months of May and June. Okay. And then we'll look at going back into the chamber the first part of July, but we'll keep an eye on it and see kind of where we are in case we need to call everybody back together and have a further discussion. Okay. Okay, going on to the second part, I'm going to call on Councilmember Toombs in just a minute for kind of a budget update or timeline. But just because there may be some referencing in her discussion, I'm going to ask Mr. Cooper if he doesn't mind to give us a brief update on this petition that's been filed to vote on the charter amendments dealing with property taxes. I know he can't get into a lot of it because of the legal analysis, legal situation of what's being filed. But Mr. Cooper, if you can let us know how it might impact the budget timelines, that might be helpful. And then I'll turn it over to Councilman Toon.
Sure. So as you know, last Thursday, roughly 14,000 signed petitions were delivered to the clerk's office. The petition included 2 dates for an election. The latter date is June 14th. The first one they can't meet, so the June 14th would be the only possible date. So that would be 1 day before we would ordinarily consider the budget on third reading. I assume that played into the decision making behind those who are pushing the petition. as far as timing. The legal question right now, well, there are several. One of them is how many signatures are needed. The charter says that you have to have 10% of the number of those voting in the preceding general election. So that if it's the preceding November general election, then he needs, or the proponents need 30-something thousand. If it's the August election, they only need 12,000 or so. So that is the legal question, that one of the legal questions that they are trying to decide. I think I know what the answer will be on that, but the election commission staff has asked Metro Legal to review that and give them an opinion. So that process is underway. So like I said, if it's on June 14th, that would be one day before we would ordinarily hold the budget reading vote on third reading. And at this point, that's to be determined. We don't know how that's going to play out as far as whether it actually gets on the ballot on June 14th.
So, Mr. Cooper, does it make any difference based upon if it's on the ballot June 14th? Does it come into play with when we should adopt the budget, with understanding that there may be an election, but does it have some implications on when we should actually try to pass the budget? Or do we know at this point?
I don't know yet. I think that could be an issue, but I don't know for sure whether that would have a material impact one way or the other. But so early voting would have, I guess, if we held it the week ahead of that, early voting would have just ended. But we couldn't hold the vote prior to early voting starting.
Okay. Well, let me go to Councilmember Toombs. Councilmember Toombs, if you don't mind, and you can certainly work with Mr. Cooper, but could you kind of lay out for executive committee members and also council members who are on kind of where we are with the budget, kind of an update, and then the timeline that you're looking at in terms of how this is all going to play out over the next couple of months?
So departments are still meeting with Tom Edelman with the Office of Budget and Management, as well as Kristen Wilson from the Mayor's Office. Those meetings should end this week. And of course, that information is going to be shared with the mayor so that he can create his budget by May 1st. That is still the deadline. As far as I know, I meet with the finance folks once a week, so I'll see if that changes when we meet this week. So before I get into the calendar, which is already set and it doesn't take into account the referendum, there will be two, I guess, educational things for the Budget and Finance Committee and any other council member that's interested. I had Shannon Hall put together a presentation on the pay plan, and that will be sent out to the council members, and there'll be an information session if people are interested in asking any follow-up questions. And I'm also going to coordinate with Vivian Wilhoit to talk about the reassessment and the certified tax rate and how that's going to impact our discussions, because those are the two big issues that we deal with the operating budget, with this being a reassessment year, and then obviously our pay plan is a big thing. Additionally, the finance department intends to only work on one substitute this budget season. I don't know exactly what that looks like, but that is the intent of the finance director, that there be only one substitute. And so that plays into the calendar for this year. There are several budget work sessions that are planned, and the goal is for those to be robust discussions so that any amendments that come from those discussions can be made to the one substitute is the chair's substitute. So any amendments that need to be made can be made to the chair's substitute. So April 30th, operating budget ordinance and tax levy filed by the mayor. Friday, May 14th is the CIB ordinance filed by the mayor. Tuesday, May 18th is first reading of operating budget, tax levy and CIB. Wednesday, May 19th. Starts the Budget and Finance Committee operating budget hearings. There'll be 5 days of hearings, so May 19th, 20th, 24th, 25th, and 26th. On Friday, May 27th, the Budget and Finance Committee deadline for wish list submissions. June 1st is public hearing for operating budget and the CIB. June 2nd is scheduled for any additional department hearings that need to be held. June 3rd, 7th, and 8th are the work sessions, which would be in time for any amendments, and those amendments will need to be filed on June the 11th, which means that the chair substitute will be filed by June the 4th. June 14th is regular scheduled Budget and Finance Committee meeting, as well as a joint committee with planning on the CIB and any amendments to it. And then June 15th is the scheduled third and final reading of the operating budget, as well as the CIB. Director Cooper, did I miss anything there? So June 17th and June 22nd are on here as if needed dates.
I think that covers everything, and we can send out the full calendar to council tomorrow, so you don't have to write all these dates down. We'll get everything to you.
Okay,
And
so
Vice Mayor, if there are any questions.
yeah, I was going to open it up for questions from folks. And I'm looking for hands or any questions at this point.
Now, I will say how the budget hearings are held are going to be a little bit different this year. Rather than having the departments reiterate the presentation that they emailed to all of us, the budget hearings are going to be a Q&A session, 30 minutes long as opposed to 15 minutes. And then some of the bigger departments will be 45 minutes to an hour long.
Councilmember O'Connell, your hand is up, and I've got some other hands up as well. Go ahead.
To that point, I guess I'm a little surprised too that the mayor's office is not really doing the budget process in any kind of public way. Do we know, has Mr. Vice Mayor, have you or Madam Chair, have you heard a reason for the lack of any kind of public visibility into the budget process on the mayor's office side of things?
I understand. Oh.
Go ahead, Councilmember Toombs.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. My understanding is that the departments did not feel like those public hearings were helpful, that people couldn't speak as freely as they would like to speak because it was a public showing. And so these private discussions are, from my understanding, are better because department heads and department department personnel feel that they can speak more freely without being in front of a camera.
Okay.
So, Councilmember, the only thing I would add is that we've been trying to figure out when the State of Metro address is going to be held, and I haven't gotten a time yet on that. And so we've been encouraging information to get out so that if you remember last year, it happened right, well, pandemic hit, and then everybody kind of hunkered down. And I think I remember the press conference being in the mayor's press room and us getting the budget about the same time we learned about the increase in the property taxes. This time, obviously, we're trying to get more information out as soon as we can. And that's about the best I can tell you at this point. I don't know. Councilmember Toombs, has the mayor's office confirmed a time for the State of Metro address? They hadn't as of last week with me.
Not yet.
Okay. Councilmember O'Connell, back to you.
The only thing I would say is I am grateful for last year. I know obviously COVID changed so much and I think probably started more serious conversations along these lines, but I appreciate then Chair Mendez and now Chair Toombs keeping a public process. And my hope would be that council always does some of this work with transparency in mind and does have a public process about spending priorities. I think it is where we need transparency the most.
All right, thank you, Council Member. Council Member Nash, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That was a great list of dates for the different events going on. Is that, can we share that? Is that gonna be available?
After what Councilmember O'Connell said, no, we're keeping everything private. You don't even get to find out. All right. No, Mr. Cooper has the list and he's going to send it out to everybody. Okay. Councilmember Nash, I thought you had written it all down. I thought you had it. So anyway.
I was trying, but I missed a bunch. Thank you.
All right. So we'll get it out to everybody. Councilmember Allen, you're recognized.
Thank you. Do we know if we're going to get a physical budget book this year?
Councilmember Toombs, Mr. Cooper, do you know?
My understanding is that they want it to be electronic, no physical book.
Okay.
So you'll have to ask, I believe it was Councilmember Parker that made copies of it last year. He may do the same thing. I've got Councilmember Vercher, you're recognized.
Thank you so much, Vice Mayor, for recognizing me. I just want to reiterate Councilman O'Connell's point. The budget hearings wasn't premised around department heads being able to speak freely or not. That was part one, council members having an opportunity to hear departmental requests before they come before the body, and two, just adding that level of transparency as well, given that our budget process is strongly driven by the mayor's office. If we're going to say we're going to be transparent, then we need to be transparent. And then lastly, I will end too with this, that if we're not going to have those mayoral hearings, we need something for the legislative body to have department heads to attest to what they've provided to the mayor's office. And my understanding is that the mayor hasn't been meeting with department heads, that he's delegated that authority to one of his staff to lead the budget process. So we just need to get a clear understanding as to the why. If they don't want to do it, that's one thing, but we shouldn't put it on department heads where they say they couldn't speak freely. The purpose of the hearing is to be transparent. And we've gotten burned by this before with the Metro Water debacle, with the flood wall, and I don't want to rehash the Metro Water Services issue, but it's incumbent upon us to make sure that we have a full, transparent budget process so that we're making the best decision that we can as the legislative body. Thank you, Vice Mayor.
All right. Thank you, Councilmember Vercher. I've got Councilmember Henderson.
Thank you, Vice Mayor, for recognizing me, as I don't serve on the executive committee at this time. But I did want to concur with Council Lady Vercher, and my question or comment is kind of in line with Councilman O'Connell. I want department directors to be able to speak freely with the mayor's office, but they can do that any day of the week, all year long. They can call up there and express problems and concerns. And so I'm very concerned about the lack of transparency. I watched all those hearings. They informed my understanding of the budget. I think they were helpful to the community. I know there was some sort of, department chairs can't speak freely. It's just a dog and pony show or whatever. It shouldn't be that. I would hope that they would speak freely in that context. But, respectfully, I know last year was a very difficult time, and we had to, just make do as we could because of pandemic and otherwise. But I'm very concerned that if the mayor does not have his budget hearings and then we consolidate our hearings into 1 week, colleagues who are new to the council, this is a major point of accountability in each year, to kind of look back at things. And so, whether it's we don't get a budget book or the mayor's not having budget hearings, I just feel like we are not on a good trajectory at this juncture. vis-a-vis council's oversight and engagement with the budget. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Councilmember Henderson. Councilmember Withers, you're recognized.
Thank you so much, Mr. Vice Mayor, for recognizing me, because I also am not on the executive committee at this time. But I really echo what Councilmember Henderson just said. I've never served on budget and finance, but I did watch maybe not every single department, but the prior department hearings with the mayor, as well as certainly attended as many of them as I could in the council chambers, not only to make sure that I was informed, but to encourage constituents to do that. And I know that I have a lot of constituents who paid attention to those as well. And even I think, some of the reporting around Metro used to be a little bit more granular than it is today. We have good reporting today, but we just had a lot more intricate coverage, I think, in past years than we did. And so some issues such as General Hospital, for instance, kind of arose during departmental budget hearings with past mayors, and then led to much greater discussions. So I too am a little bit concerned that there's not going to be one or a couple of specific places where people can go just to view those kind of presentations, either to view the discussion or to look at the materials in a way that's kind of easy to access. So I do have some concerns about that lack of process as well, but I'll defer to the executive committee on that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Withers. And I think I've got Councilmember Welch. Yeah, you've got your hand up as well.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. I appreciate you acknowledging me. I too have to echo agreement with Council Members Vercher and O'Connell about the lack of transparency. There are 2 points here. One is that I don't think we would be looking at potential petitions to overturn the charter or to change the charter and change the property tax increases that we're facing now. This is the second time we're facing it. If we had that transparency and our constituents better understood why these decisions are being made, I think it's incumbent on us that we make sure that people understand these are not decisions made in a vacuum without acknowledging the needs of the city that perhaps they're not seeing, which brings me to the second point. It's kind of disheartening to hear that department heads feel that they can't speak freely. I feel like it's incumbent on all of us to speak freely, whether publicly or privately, about the issues that we are facing as a government body and in departments. And so I would hope that department heads would rethink and speak freely publicly about what their needs are and what their concerns are, because that is the only way we are going to be able to address these intractable issues. And when we do that in a transparent manner, then perhaps our constituents will understand we are making hard decisions because we have to for the good of the city and to move forward together as a city. So I really have concerns too about the lack of transparency, because I think ultimately it hurts us on many different levels. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember. So I think Councilmember Toombs has her hand up. I'm going to go to her for the last comment on this because I know we have some reports coming in after this. So let me end up with Councilmember Toombs, and then we'll go on to the next item on the agenda. Councilmember Toombs.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. Not to express any opinion either way on the transparency of how the mayors conducted the hearings on that side. But I will say that each department was asked to submit a investment request, which is basically, how much funding do you need to do all of what you want to do? And they were asked to be honest about that and just, regardless of what the number is, be honest about what their financial needs are. They were also asked to describe or explain what would happen if their funding were reduced by 2%. And all of that documentation is online. There's a huge book, over 500 pages of the modification request. And then there's a shorter, more of a summary of what each department submitted. And both of those documents are online. Just a point of information.
All right, thank you, Councilmember Toombs.
Vice Mayor, I know that you said you were going to move on, but I just think in light of that, this is Van Reese. Sorry about the voice.
No, I can tell by the voice, Councilmember Van Ness.
Yes, sorry. Uh, uh, I, I think that I'm on the executive committee is because we chair other committees. And so I, for one, will be asking the department heads of my committee represents to present the summary of that document to the committee. And so therefore it will be in that committee meeting. I think that if all of us agreed to do that, there's going to be some that will not be represented, and Chair Budget and Finance can make sure that that information is available to everybody. I think that that would be a way for us to compartmentalize and get information out in a way that people can digest. And if everyone agrees on that, I would just request that the clerk allow us time in our meetings to make sure that that happens.
Okay. All right, thank you, Councilmember. Okay, so I think I've got that, and I've got the point about getting the clerk to give you some more time if you need to do that with your budgets. Okay. Okay, so we were going to go on to item 3. This is just a quick report from any special committees that are out there, just to kind of let you know where it was, like a minute or two, just an analysis. Councilmember Allen, I'm going to save you for the last because I got to figure out how we try to figure out what to do with the report that you presented. But Councilmember Evans, quick analysis on where you are with the COVID committee, the special committee, looking back on COVID.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Yes, so we've had several meetings so far. We started in January with a review of Metro Nashville Public Schools and their COVID response. We also met with some of the stakeholders that helped pass legislation by Councilman Syracuse on beer delivery last year, the temporary outdoor dining permit. We reviewed the Slow Streets initiative that was a big part of COVID last year to encourage more people to walk and bike with Derek Haggerty and members of Walk Bike Nashville. Most recently, we had a joint meeting with the Metro with Health and Hospitals Committee with Councilman Taylor about Metro Public Health's vaccine response, and also some of the differences in the different types of vaccines that were available. We had a volunteer activity with doing the 10,000 shot vaccine extravaganza at Nissan Stadium. And we're starting to get into, I'm going to revisit communication related to some of that legislation from earlier, because I think some of the information that came out in some of the calls really targeted some opportunities for improvement and how we receive information as a council. And then lastly, just in case people have not been reading their emails, the weekly Metro Public Health calls did transition to every other week. And so we met last week, and then we will not meet this week, and then we'll meet again the following week. So that's what I have for now.
All right, thank you, Councilmember Evans. Strategic planning, I've got Councilmember Syracuse.
Thanks, Vice Mayor. So this has been a process that I guess I've been going through since almost the end of 2019 or so when I first proposed this, and thank you for the support to do it. It really looks at us as a department strategically, and I kind of broke it out into 4 categories. So again, this is taken a long time, but we're inching there. The first category was looking at us from a human resources perspective, and we, thanks to our HR department, we have a lot of data comparing us to other legislative bodies, not just local legislative bodies, because as we know, we are the 3rd largest local. So we looked at it from the perspective of how many legislators that the body has. For example, the state of Nebraska has 49 members, and they are a unicameral body. So we're looking at it from that perspective. We need to take the data still and make some business intelligence out of it. So we're getting there. I know, for example, a lot of folks would like better communication support in the department. Well, let's find out what we have, what we don't have, and compare us to other bodies, and make a more strategic decision about how that looks and works. So that's the first category. The second one was looking at the physical nature of the second floor. So thanks to John, Rosie, and Elizabeth, we have met and we have been discussing with General Services about looking, again, strategically about how the second floor could better function. General Services has been great. They should be close to giving us a proposal about how that could lay out. That would ultimately, I guess, be, if everybody agrees, a CIB item that could eventually be funded at some point when it's appropriate. But it's again, planning. The next aspect is the technology aspect and where we are headed with as Nashville.gov rolls out, as Hub Nashville seems to take over the entirety of Metro Nashville, which I think is a good thing, and the systems that we are using. So as part of this, and kind of going back to the human resources aspect, we are putting together a pretty robust survey, if you will, in that I hope that we get 100% participation from all council members about how they engage with staff, about systems that they use. Are they aware of certain ITS functions and services that they offer? Certain council members use certain services that others do not. So we need to get an idea of what we know, what we don't know, and what services are out there, and what we could potentially use in the future. The final piece is looking at council member onboarding and training. Again, working with HR, and then also thanks to council members Evans, Allen, Hauser, and Stiles, that they've had a series of meetings, kind of putting a framework together about what we need to do to be to train and have professional growth opportunities for us and whatnot. Budget and finance, planning and zoning, things like that. How much time do we really spend on this when you're a new council member? And do you feel that you have enough support in that regard? So this framework and everything that I just talked about, I hope to give in writing to everybody when this survey goes out. That should be hopefully in the next couple months or so. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Syracuse. Good report. And just let us know how the survey is going. That's good. Councilmember Vercher, I was just reading, she sent me the report in case her phone went dead. Are you still on with us?
I am, Vice Mayor. I'm just going to hit the highlights because I'll be sending a written report. This is basically too long to read, but I will say this. Tornado recovery, for those that can remember the 2010 flood, we did learn some things as it related to activating and collaborating with agencies, and also to just the district council members just working with those agencies and getting that information out to their constituents has been a huge benefit also. So most of the council members that say that their constituents are, 80 to 85% recovered. The renters continues to be an issue due to the lack of affordable housing, and several landlords have either one, sold their property, or two, have not chosen to repair and rebuild. And three, may still be in discussions with their respective insurance agencies as it relates to claims. The new THDA grant, coupled with the community foundation, totaled $500,000, and that will be used to help with housing opportunities across the community. So just the case management report, 16 phone calls to Tornado Recovery Connection in the previous 2 weeks, 150 cases closed, 137 cases open, 203 referrals, and 2 pending cases. But more importantly, the construction report, 51 homes in the pipeline for repair and rebuild. That's huge. And 42 active or completed. Really, at this point, for the district council members, for their areas that was impacted, to continue, and all of us really, to continue to communicate the resources for these families, for anyone that may still have unmet needs related to the tornado that may not necessarily be plugged into the pipeline, for them to call the tornado recovery connection.
All right. Thank you, Councilmember Vercher. I'm looking at your information. That's really helpful. It may be that we can put this in, if you're okay, put it into something we can send out to all the council members. Is that okay?
Yeah, let me clean up the language because it's incomplete. I'll clean up the language as official written report to you, Vice Mayor.
Okay. That would be great. Thank you. Yeah, because I didn't want to do it for you. Okay. All right.
Thank you.
All right. Councilmember Cash, the daycare stuff.
Yep.
Any information you need to report?
Yeah, well, we have a great group of people in the childcare, early education field. A lot of great resources. So we're working on our final. We've started on our final report. We've collected a lot of data and other reports. I want to share the kind of the goals that we have. But first, just kind of point out that this is an important issue. It impacts a lot of families. We have a lot of child care deserts in Davidson County where there aren't that many opportunities for families close by. This has become more true over the last year with COVID, and hopefully will get better. But it was before and will be after. So like we've set a number of great goals, growing the number of quality childcare centers that are affordable, or free and accessible, expand home-based care opportunities and micro centers. Some of those might be like employer sponsored, or we've also looked at, we've got a couple people looking at having daycare centers in like metro schools or in facilities really close to metro schools. We want to be able to leverage private sector, nonprofit, and church resources, including like space, especially space that any of those facilities may have for micro centers or daycare centers. Find facilities for new centers, consider and encourage community benefits agreements to include childcare facilities. I know that came up in the meeting I had, and I'm sure many others had, with Metro General Hospital and their plans for the next decade. And I think that's they're in tune to that, as is the mixed use facilities on the soccer fairgrounds campus, including a childcare center. Work with MDHA to enhance opportunities for their residents when it comes to childcare, discuss transportation, and getting a lot of data, making sure they're quality teachers, well-paid, benefits. We've talked a lot about affordable housing and given a lot of attention to it, but families are having trouble affording good childcare as well. And so that's, I think, part of helping our families out, is making sure that those with young children have opportunities. And basically, kind of like, there are a lot of resources out there, and we want to make sure that Metro can find a way to help people, help those different institutions pull those resources together. We also are looking at if there are regulations that are prohibitive. For example, like Metro, not the state, but Metro has a rule that says that daycare centers or home care centers have to have a water fountain. Well, we know now, because of COVID, that we've avoided using water fountains. So there might be, looking at those regulations and making it a little easier for folks to start childcare centers. That's the main list of the different things that we would like to accomplish and bring attention to. And like I said, we're starting on we've had some great discussions and are starting on our report, and we'll have that like late April or early May.
All right, thank you, Council Member. I've got the report on the jail data committee. This was the committee that was basically created by a student at Lipscomb that was saying, can you look at the jail data and try to determine people going in and out of our county jails to determine who they are in the sense of, are the same people going in and out of the facilities? And is there a way to look at new resources or the reallocation of resources to try to stop sort of that revolving door with some of these individuals? We've had a number of people speak to us, and I'll go through that list in a minute, but basically we started with a group of people and we've been adding people on, so we have more and more people that show up on each of the calls, which is really good. Turns out that a number of people, as you would expect, are being picked up and incarcerated, and it's sort of a revolving door. There's a lot of people, obviously, with mental health concerns or substance abuse issues that our sheriff's department are seeing often in the facility. So part of it, what we've been exploring is pulling together data and then also hearing from some of the people engaged in this process. So we heard from the sheriff. We've heard from the mental health cooperative, which is a lady by the name of Amanda Brock, who is Senior Vice President of Clinical Services for the Mental Health Cooperative. Not only are they involved with helping operate the new facility at the jail downtown with the sheriff's department, but they're the folks who get called when there's a mental health issue, either directly or through the police, and they go out and help answer calls. Very, very interesting person to listen to and to talk to about how this all works. We talked to the gentleman who is in charge of the behavioral health facility at the sheriff's department. And that led to a whole bunch of questions about how many people were actually being channeled through that facility. How does that work? What happens if people are picked up on a Friday? Who is making the determinations? Apparently the public defender and the DA. There's a representative both that look at the cases and then encourage them not to be incarcerated, but to move over into this behavioral health facility. There were questions about what about people who are picked up on felony charges? Are they allowed for that? That's the DA got on the call last time and started talking through that. We have our next call on Thursday. The public defender, Martisha Johnson, is going to be on, and she's going to talk about what she thinks in terms of the whole thing. Pretty interesting people with lots of different ideas. So we're not anywhere like Councilmember Cash is in terms of a final report. We just keep going with more people talking. And I would invite any of you to join on. It's this Thursday at 5. It's an hour-long conversation, and then we have sent out a tremendous amount of data to all these individuals, primarily citizens that are on this committee. We haven't had a chance to get to the data yet. So anyway, just letting you know that's where we are on that committee. I think those are all the committees except for Councilmember Allen. This was the committee that I created and asked Councilmember Allen to chair it with some other council members and some former council members. Obviously this has been such an up and down year. And I've said at the beginning of a number of meetings that particularly with what I see happening, and I don't blame everybody in Washington, but a lot of division across the country and particularly divisiveness in Washington heading our way. The idea was, how do we as a body make it better for both Nashville and sort of push back and say, we're going to be better. We're going to figure out a way through what is really an extremely difficult time. How do we make it better? And I talked to a number of different people, including National League of Cities, and they encouraged me to take a look at codes of conduct in other cities. And that's when I said, okay, I think I'll put together a group, because they actually recommended that as well. I asked Councilmember Allen to do it. And so Councilmember Allen, I'll turn it over to you and let you tell us what the committee came up with.
Thank you. It was a great committee. I think I can remember all the members, Councilmember Brett Withers and Courtney Johnston were other current council members, and Larry Hagar, and then former council members included Sherry Weiner, Eileen Behan, Frank Harrison, and Phil Ponder. So spanning some generations with lots of good institutional knowledge, which I think was helpful. And we started, I think, most importantly, with a statement of why we felt like this was necessary, because some of the conversation before we even met from other council members, you know, even questioned the need for any kind of official document. And essentially stated that, you know, the ability to have cordial civil conversations, even about difficult topics, is the best way to work through those difficult topics. And that we think it is important to be able to disagree in a way that fosters constructive, even if difficult, conversation. And so to do that, we put together just general guidelines that are nothing, I think, revolutionary, but just what your mama taught you as a little child, how to behave and treat people. And that that it is not just how we speak to each other or treat each other, but also how we treat Metro staff and also how we treat the public. And we divided that into 4 categories. Language, how we speak with each other, and it's much of just general Robert's Rules of Orders, addressing the chair, being open-minded, focusing on the issues and not personalizing the issues. We spoke briefly about dress and ultimately acknowledged that there's an awful lot of different multicultural standards, and that we would simply make a general statement about being professional according to appropriate multicultural standards. Next was behavior in the chamber, and we focused both on how the council should be behaving in the chamber or the virtual chamber, and also some general guidelines on public participation within the chamber. And again, mostly dealing with officially addressing the chair when we are speaking in the chamber and not making issues personal. And finally, we dealt with electronic communication, because that, even once we get beyond all the virtual meetings with COVID, is still a large part of how we communicate with the public. So just some general guidelines for being respectful, both on social media and on any public media. And although there are times when we should be able to let our guard down and be regular people, just to acknowledge that we are public officials, and even when we're on vacation, people may be looking at our social media for how we are treating people, and that we still should continue to be appropriately respectful under those circumstances as well. And then finally, we talked about accountability, and didn't want to create a bunch of hard and fast rules, but just to put some quote teeth around enforcing or giving people further reason to be respectful of the guidelines. Beginning with, if there are issues, that council members would resolve those issues directly through positive and direct communication. And if that is not an effective means of dealing with an issue, then that we would, either council members or members of the public would report inappropriate conduct to the vice mayor in writing, and that the vice mayor could then discuss the issue with the appropriate council member, and that your powers extend essentially to running the meeting and allowing people to be recognized or not recognized in a council meeting and in committee assignments. But those can be meaningful consequences if there were ever something that were so egregious that you felt like the vice mayor actually needed to take action. But our hope again is that simply as a group acknowledging how we believe we should treat each other and our staff and our public, that most issues, the few that do come up, can be dealt with through direct communication. And our final point, and I'm going to read this one word for word, was that all members of the council and the public should always grant each other grace, especially in times of hardship like floods, tornadoes, pandemics, riots, and bombings. So I think we acknowledge that our goal is to be civil and respectful with each other, but we will also acknowledge that there may be times when there is so much stress involved in something that there may be circumstances that would have to be recognized as extraordinary, in which that behavior could be forgiven. So our suggestion was we put this in the form of a resolution with the whereases and therefores, and we would like to incorporate it as an appendix to Rule 45 in our council rules, which deals very briefly with decorum, and simply add a reference to this and place it at the back of the rules. That is what the committee suggested, but we are open to input from the council. So that is my civility committee report.
All right, thank you, Councilmember Allen. Let me go to Mr. Cooper first. Mr. Cooper, because it may be something that we may look at as an adoption of the rules, can we discuss this openly, or do we need to wait and have any discussion about it at a council meeting?
Since the meeting was publicly noticed, I think we can discuss it here. We would just need to wait to obviously take any kind of action until a council meeting.
Sounds good. Councilmember Mendez, you're recognized.
Thanks, Vice Mayor. I won't belabor it because I've expressed it before, and obviously the council will vote however it votes. But this is a bad idea. It adds no additional enforcement that you don't already have as Vice Mayor, and all that's going to happen, no matter how the rules are written, there's going to be circumstances where people bring to your attention certain social media posts by one person or another. There's no way that there will end up being even treatment. From what I heard at the meeting I attended, you wouldn't be subject to the rules. And if rules like this had been in effect, there would have been complaints from the public. I'm not busting your chops about it. I'm just objectively saying there would have been complaints about you last June after the public budget hearing. I think this is not going to accomplish anything good, especially if all the enforcement leaves you with exactly the same powers you have now to control committee assignments and who gets recognized in the chamber. Again, I've said this once when we were at the convention center, once at one of the committee meetings, and I'll leave it. This will be the last time I say it, because I know a lot of people have worked hard on it, and I know I may not be in the majority of how I feel about this, and so I'll let it go. I just want to make sure to get it off my chest one last time. Thanks, Vice Mayor.
All right, thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember O'Connell, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. I'm going to kind of follow on Councilmember Mendez here. My issue here is we already have tools. We have a censure process. We have a variety of mechanisms to enforce conduct when we think people cross a line. I worry that this adds a lot of gray area that would, to Councilmember Mendez's point, bring a lot of unnecessary challenges. I mean, if we look at the way that the public is looking at Metro right now, we are seeing people exploit the opportunity to bring noise that is not in good faith. I mean, we're watching the second of a clumsy petition effort that is taking advantage of the charter process. And it's all based around a lack of trust. And frankly, I don't think people elected any of us to come here under the terms of some mysterious code of conduct. In some cases, people elected us to fight. Sometimes fighting requires being uncivil. Sometimes civility masks the problems that we are here to address. And while I agree with the general principle of this, I would not want to vote in a code of conduct, the enforcement of which would actually, in my view, contribute to a worse functioning of the body. I think the collegial nature of the job, when we are back in person, we know this has been an extraordinary year. People were experiencing extraordinary amounts of stress for both political and pandemic reasons. And I think that once we are back in the chamber together, we should be back to a method of working with one another that reinforces these principles just as a matter of social interaction. And that is what I would recommend people do instead of voting this in.
All right, thank you, Councilmember O'Connell. I think that's it on the hands. So Councilmember Allen, I'll let you proceed with in terms of whether you want to file something in terms of the rules or whatever. But
Thank you. I'll go back and speak to the committee with the comments that were made here, and I appreciate the open and honest discussion, which is what we are advocating. And we'll just point out that part of our process was to look at other cities, and there are a number of other cities, many of them the peer cities that we frequently emulate, who have some type of code and go through the explanation of why they feel like it is important. And again, so that they can spell out how that they agree to disagree. And so I appreciate the comments, and I appreciate the concerns that we not box ourselves in, and we'll take those comments back to the committee, and then we will make a final decision about what to file. And you won't see it at the next council meeting, but we'll go through the rule change process, since this will be part of the rules, if that's the ultimate decision that the committee comes to. So thank you for the opportunity to present.
thank you, Councilmember Allen. Okay, we'll go on because I know we're right at 5 and we have this presentation, which is going to take a little bit of time. The fourth item on the agenda was the council retreat. Don't have to panic yet. We haven't called it yet. It would be sometime probably later in the summer, assuming we get through the pandemic. Typically for a council, we have a retreat at the end of the first year where we kind of all sit down, take a breath, kind of figure out where we are, work through issues. We didn't have the opportunity last year since we couldn't get together. But the idea is that we may have one later on. It's not like we're going anywhere. We just stay someplace in Nashville, but it would be a chance for the council to meet kind of informally and talk through some stuff. So be thinking, we're not going to spend a lot of time now because I want to get to the software presentation, but be thinking about issues that you would like to bring up. It includes, and it may have been Councilmember Withers that said this at the beginning, information about, just some basic stuff. I will tell you, we tried to have a lot of stuff at the beginning of this, an orientation for new council members at the beginning. That orientation lasted a lot longer than usually we have. But a lot of times it's not enough. And usually after the first year, go back and remind people about certain things. We didn't have the chance to do that this time. So we're talking about a retreat. It will be later. And if you have ideas, let me know. Councilmember Withers, since I called your name, I'm going to recognize you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Vice Mayor. Appreciate that. And actually, this is something that we discussed quite a bit in the Civility Committee, is that, this council class, due to so many things that have been going on, just haven't, had as many just opportunities just to hang out in the break room or get to know each other just as people, as well as I think a lot of other council classes before us have. And so that's one of the things that we had actually talked about in our committee, was having a retreat. And that might be really something that I suggest, is just not having all of it be informational in terms of like a lecture style, but just incorporating some ways for us as a body to get to know each other a little bit better. And what are things like in your part of town? Because I know even in District 6, I have 8 neighborhoods and each of them is very different, even though they're right next door. So I just think sometimes that context and interpersonal context would go a long way toward the civility that I think all of us agree is important. So if we could try to work some of those get to know each other exercises or opportunities into that retreat, I think that would be very beneficial. But thank you for that consideration.
All right, thank you, Councilmember Withers. And now that he's muted, he's going to be one of the co-chairs of planning the retreat. All right, so moving on, that gets us to the last item on the agenda, the software presentation. Councilmember Suara, are you on?
Yes, Vice Mayor, I'm here.
There you are. All right, so this is something that's a special committee that you asked for, but now you have a presentation. So I'm going to turn it over to you, and then I think you're going to get some help from IT to kind of lay out this thing. Is that right?
Yes, yes, I will. And just so to remind everyone, because this task force was formed a long time ago, we had to put it aside because there were so many IT needs because of COVID to get us all on electronically. So, but this is the project to look into how council member can interact and collaborate electronically without going in violation of the Sunshine Law. And so I've been working with Slade and the IT, and then we have a committee, council members that have been looking at it. So this has been presented to us, to the council members that are on the committee, but we felt like before any decision is made, we wanted to present it to the executive committee, see if you all have any questions, and then go from there. And so at this point, I will turn it to Slade, who is on the call. Thank you.
All right, Slade, you're recognized. All right, Slade, can you hear us? Well, he's on and he's not muted.
Maybe he's using the new platform.
He could be, and that could be a problem. Thank you, Councilmember O'Connell. Let's see. Slade, can you hear us? Anybody else from IT on that can help us with this?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm trying to get a hold of him via Jabber real quick.
Okay. Okay, everybody just hold for a minute. And
he just texted me that he's having tech issues and he got out and is joining back.
Okay. All right. While we're waiting for Slade to come back on, remember
while we're waiting, I can provide some basic information that I've had. Okay, thank you. And so this product that we're looking at that was presented to us has the capability of doing two things. It allows the council member to be able to have a conversation. That conversation will also be something that the public will be able to view, but the public will not be interacting and asking questions on that, but they can see everything that we're talking about. And then there's a part of it that actually has an outward face where we can actually interact with the public. What the committee has decided to do is go ahead and just look at the councilman to councilman portion of it for now, and then maybe at a later date, if we need to add on, we can get to that. I think Slade is here. If you stop, yeah, there you are. So I'll let you show the actual thing.
Thank you so much. And so I just wanted to briefly introduce my team from Granicus. I know many of you have witnessed over the past year, we've implemented a new legislative platform from our vendor Granicus. And so they have a relationship with a group called Bang the Table, which has a platform of solutions for online community engagement. One of those requirements we wanted to present to the committee today that would enable council members to communicate between each other in an online format setting to where the community and the public can view that conversation, but would not be able to engage in that conversation. So I wanted to introduce you to Matthew Howell from Granicus. He's our account point person for this solution, and Jeremy Shackett from Bang the Table, who will be presenting us with a short demo of this specific component of the overall platform. Matt?
Thank you, Slade, and thank you, Vice Mayor Schulman, and I appreciate the council's time this afternoon. My name is Matthew Howell. I am the Granicus account executive here for you, and I'm here with my colleague, Jeremy Shackett. He's from our partners at Bang the Table. Ed, Slade, you've done a fantastic job of sort of giving a high-level overview of the solution. And to best serve your time this afternoon, we think it's best to probably forego a drawn-out PowerPoint presentation, and we're just going to jump right into the software presentation. I'll let you see how it would actually function. So for that, I think I'm going to turn it over directly to Jeremy, who will sort of be the product expert on this. Jeremy.
Thank you, everybody, for your time. And Thank you for the great introductions, Matthew, Slade, and Councilmember Suara. Bang the Table is, like was mentioned, a community engagement platform that is built for local government. And we work with nearly 1,000 governments of all different sizes in 5 countries. And the definition of that might change from client to client. Like Councilmember Suara said, one of the main purposes is to be a avenue for the local government to engage the public directly on major projects and initiatives. But what we're going to show here, as I share my screen, pardon me one second, is the mock-up that I built to show how council members can engage with each other. And I'm running into a tiny little glitch here. I meant to get my whole screen. Pardon me on that. If I'm talking about something that doesn't show up on your screen, please shout and holler. But what I wanted to build here, like Councilmember Suarez said, this can be scaled up from council-only engagement to broad public-facing engagement. Now, I'm taking you through the experience of what it would be like to be an elected official on here. One of the things that we covered was being able to engage in a way that the public can't participate in the discussion or talk directly with you, but you can talk with each other, but they can see it. So I'm logged in right now as pretend Vice Mayor Schulman, you see at the top right-hand corner. I go and view this project. Now, to this point right here, if I'm a member of the general public, all of this that you see here is what it would look like to them. All of the information you want to provide, all of the forum topics, all of the things that people are saying. And on the previous discussion, one of the things that we heard was that there's no really convenient way to talk about things that are outside of decision-making and very formal setups. So something like, hey, is the Monday morning meeting still on? I'm not sure. Someone replies, yes. Now, when someone like Slade is putting this together in the back end, what Slade gets to do is set the privacy. Let anybody, if you see this paneled square right here, anybody can see this project, but only the specific panelists that you select can participate. So what Slade will do is select every single person on this list who signs up, say that only they can participate, but then the public has reasonable access and notification and all of that, so they can be aware of the conversations going on. One thing that I want to also cover here is that the way this is structured, you can set either general topics. So I created a March forum, a February forum. You can also go topic specific. This is what I copied from other council forums that I saw across Tennessee. So either way, Slade, whenever you're putting these together, all you have to do is just hit, put in the title and hit publish. So it's very easy to stand these up. A new thing that those of you who were on the last call should know that we just released is the ability for council members themselves to create these discussion topics if they want. That is something that I will defer to you on because it might just be logistically better and better for organization. But either way, this is the space for you to talk about issues and ideas and policies, any kind of topic of discussion that's outside of formal council discussion in a way that is compliant with the Tennessee Open Meetings Law, which I have up here as well. So that is a high-level overview on first of all, what the experience would look like to the council member that's participating in this forum, and then also the safeguards and the tools that we have in place that allow you to set the boundaries and the scope of discussion in a way that is compatible with the law. So with that, again, I want to thank everybody for their time and recognize that we have bled a little bit past the hour. I am an open book, though, as long as you would like for questions, further discussion. I will give back the floor and once again say thank you to everybody.
Thank you, Jeremy.
All right. Councilmember Swart, I'll go back to you. Comments on kind of the overall system, what you think?
Thank you. The committee and I believe that this would do what we needed to do. If you all remember, one of my frustration when I first started is that some of us will be looking at legislation or looking at agenda on the weekend and have a question. And because it's weekend, we don't have time to get the response. We don't know who to go to, or sometimes you get it late, or clarification. This allows us to be able to get question answers, get clarification without doing it individually to one person that gets us as not in compliance. So this serves what we need to do, and I like the idea that we can make it where public can see it. We can make it where it could, whatever we need to do. And I'm sure legal will have to look at it. But on the face of it, I think it's a place to get us started. And I think it will foster better collaboration among council members. And we don't have to ask every single questions on the floor. Some questions we have to ask on the floor. We want the public to know that, but they do have access to this. Anybody can look at it, but maybe it will save us some time as we're doing our review, and some of the easy question, generic one, we can ask here without me calling it. I can't even call a council member up. That's the thing. And so this is what this does. So this does what I think it needs to do. And my my committee member, Councilmember Rosenberg, is on here. He was on the presentation, Councilmember Stiles, and I believe Councilmember Roten are the committee members. And so and the cost is also good, but we'll get to that in a minute. But functionality, I believe it does, it will get us started.
All right. So I'm looking for hands up. Let me see. Councilmember O'Connell, you've got your hands up. I'm looking through the screen. Councilmember O'Connell, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. It sounded like Councilmember Suara was going to get to this, but my question was going to be about cost.
Councilmember Suara, can you go ahead and answer that?
Yes, based on what I have, and I'll let Jeremy and Slade chime in if I'm wrong. My understanding is that for this part that we're trying to do, we're looking at no more than a $30,000 cost. It could be less, but I don't even know if the 30,000 is when we actually do with the public or even just the council member. But the number that I have was about 30,000.
Councilmember Suara, you are correct about the ballpark. I just wanted to confirm that, if that's okay. I would also like to mention that the way that we structure our licenses, since the default setting in a way is the whole kind of run the gamut public engagement with the whole city's residents. Our basic boilerplate pricing is dependent on that. So one thing Slade and I have been scoping out, along with Matthew, has been a pilot, recognizing that it will be a smaller scope. It will be a few dozen council members engaging with each other. And the reason we can go lower on that price, which off the top of my head is something like 10,000 for that small, one project trial. The reason is the citywide public engagement licenses include moderation by humans of all these discussion boards. So it's a much lower lift for our company if we don't have a professional team of moderators moderating every single comment that Nashville residents are saying in a city as big as yours. So, so either way, We are working on the exact scope, but ballpark, that is accurate to my knowledge.
Then I guess I have a follow-up to make sure I'm understanding the intersection between cost and functionality. When we first talked about this, it sounded like the idea here was to create a forum for interactivity with council members. Is the expectation that a final full deployment would have sort of moderated discussion with the whole of Nashville? Or is that
no. Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, I was going to say, or is that an optional characteristic? Because one of the other things I wanted to figure out is, could we test drive this without any cost? My concern would be, we spend $30,000 and nobody uses it.
So the way it is right now is that the product has the capability of having a moderator, of also engaging the public. And if I understand correctly, that's the 30,000 level. But just the member-only part of it will be the 10,000. Now, can we text drive before we use it? I will leave that to Jeremy and the team. I hope we can.
Thank you, Councilmember Suara. I would like to say that first of all, it is correct that you don't have to automatically scale up to the full citywide rollout ever if you don't want to. It can stay at just the council forum functionality, and I know that's the top priority here. Keep it nice and simple. In terms of doing a test drive, that is something that we would be happy to explore. I did build this demo site, and I can have real Vice Mayor Schulman and everybody else on this call to feel free to register and participate in a demo setting, see how it looks and feels. Now, in terms of doing a free pilot indefinitely, that's something that I'm not sure I can greenlight, but in general, we are happy to work with you on what's the best way to make sure everyone's comfortable and everyone will use this effectively.
Yeah, I'm definitely not suggesting indefinitely. I'm suggesting more like, a full quarter or some period of time where we would go through enough of municipal life that we could see, are people actually going to log onto this platform on a regular basis, use it, and actually get the mileage out of it that I know Councilmember Suara is hoping for.
We've got about 10 minutes left, and I've got a couple of other people still in the queue, so let me get to them. Councilmember Van Rees, you had your hand up.
Yes, I was curious about notification. So if you sign up to use this, how are you notified that there's a message that you've been tagged in, or how does that work?
Councilmember Van Rees, thank you for the question. And there are a couple of ways. First of all, you might have noticed me replying directly onto this thread in real time, and the box was checked, notify me if anyone replies to this. The other thing that I want to make sure I cover to that point is that there is a built-in email newsletter tool. And if you look on the blue left-hand panel of my screen right now, there's newsletters, the fourth one down. That is something that Slade or somebody in IT can use to send out a newsletter to everybody as soon as a topic is published.
And is this, I'm assuming that this is mobile friendly, and so notifications would be applicable on any Android or iOS device?
Yes, any device, desktop, mobile, you name it.
Yeah, I just wondered if it was if you actually utilized it through the app. Sorry about my voice. Utilized it through the app, or if you utilize it via a website, and if the user has the ability to decide where notifications are sent. Sorry about my voice.
All good, all good. Yes, it would be accessed through the website, and then the website is responsive to any device. And then the notifications would occur over email. And you can customize You can customize, if you do receive or don't receive notifications. But as of now, it would only be over email.
So what's the difference in just sending? Okay, it's just going to create more email. That's what I'm worried about. Otherwise, I love it. I just think we're just going to get a whole lot more email.
All right, let me go on to Councilmember Evans. You're recognized.
Thank you, Vice Mayor, for taking my question. I was just looking at the Bang the Table government section on the website, and I see a lot of really interesting examples that look very planning focused and engagement on the planning process. Are there any government entities that are using the platform in the way that we're discussing using it?
Councilmember Evans, that is a great question. Thank you. And I might confess that being an urban planner by trade myself, I might have put a bug in the ear of some people on our marketing team. So apologies for that if might have led you down a different direction there. But the answer is yes. Golden, Colorado is using our platform for council type of conversations. They're the only example in the US, and I chose not to show it here because on previous calls, Slade and I discussed how they deployed the technology, and it was in a different way and a different structure than than you were looking for, but it has been done. And then the only other thing I'll add is we've been asked about it by people in other states, and they've come to the conclusion that it's actually illegal in those states. So Tennessee, I think, did a very good job of laying out very reasonable rules around communication here electronically on an online forum. So control who can communicate, make a good faith effort to provide access. There are some states that say you can't do anything like this at all. So Tennessee is to my knowledge, a little bit unique in that regard. Also Colorado, but I would say Golden is the one example we have offhand.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Evans. Councilmember Henderson.
Thank you, Vice Mayor, and thank you so much, Council Lady Suara. I think my question comes, I anticipated or had hopes about this forum more in kind of the legislative formation stage. So if I know certain colleagues are interested in cycling or this or that, I mean, at present, I hope it's kosher, but I might send a couple of colleagues, with no comment, no whatever, just an article from Twitter or something like that, and just send that through the messaging service. Because I think it's interesting vis-a-vis policy or what other cities are doing. And so, I want us to continue to use our committee structure proactively, to be thinking about policy and making those strategic goals. But I can see a way in which, internal to a committee, you might say, oh, does anybody want to work on this issue, right? And then you create a group and, people can join if they are interested in the suggested, policy stuff related to bikeways or something like that, right? You could sort of opt in to working on bikeway policy or opt in to working on, sentencing or, just anything that's of particular interest to you. So, and again, having that 100% publicly accessible and visible. And I think that's good for the community to see, like, oh, these are the council members who are interested in working on this. This is what their thought is on that. I don't necessarily worry, but I sort of question about it being used for any discussion or questions around current or pending legislation. I think that still needs to happen in committee, on the floor. But I think it may have potential as kind of a formative tool in working with colleagues to plan out policy or just kind of suss things out and chat about those. So can you kind of speak to the reasoning around that, Council Lady Suara, about, you know, whether it would be confined just to internal policy making? I worry it will become less useful if it's kind of a, this does all these things. And to Councilman O'Connell's point, I think there's some merit in, you know, using it for a while and kind of how does it work for us and getting some feedback on it, and how would council members like it to work for us? Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to let Director Cooper speak about whether we can talk about current legislation or not. But I'll give you a good example of one of the things that prompted me. We were talking in one of the committee meetings, and we wanted to write a letter to the mayor for something. But the way it works right now is that when I draft a letter to be seen by my committee members, I have to send it to the council office. Then the council office have to circulate it to everybody, but they cannot amend it. They cannot do anything with me directly. So it took us almost 2 weeks to even draft a letter and get everyone's response. And I think those are the kind of things that I'm thinking that you could use this for. People can put their comment and say, this is what I would like to see in that letter, without having to do email back and forth with the council office. So that was one of the things that was frustrating. Again, I do think that,
agreed. I really concur with that, because that's so true in our caucuses, trying to do letters and resolutions, and yeah, agreed. Thank you. And please continue. I just wanted to concur with you. Thank you.
So thank you. But I also do hope that this is where Director Cooper will be able to speak to. So if I'm reviewing a legislation, and I have a clarifying question, I hope I should be able to ask it here. Do you mean this or do you mean that? And get the sponsor to respond. I hope it could do that as well. Planning definitely can do. Letters and stuff it can do. And I think it would help a lot. But I'm also hoping that I can just say, oh, what does this mean? And somebody can respond to me. That's the part that I think Director Cooper can say whether we can do or not. But I'm hoping that with all the notices that is out, with everybody knowing that this is there, and if we have to even say that we ask questions in the forum to keep us compliant, I hope that's okay, because we've given enough notices and faith-based effort. But I'll leave that to Director Cooper.
Cooper.
Councilmember Suara, the state law does set up the guidelines for how you can use the forum, and as long as it is open to the public to view, then yes, you could ask questions and a sponsor could reply about if you had a question about legislation. I think that you cannot use it to substitute for deliberation or decision making, but you can communicate to and ask questions about the legislation.
That's what I thought, but I wanted you to say that on the record. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Councilmember Suara. So it's 5:34. I've got 2 more people in the queue, and then I promised Councilmember Johnston I'd recognize her at the end. Let me get to Councilmember Taylor and then Councilmember Nash. Councilmember Taylor.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. This is Councilmember Taylor. My apologies for the delay. There was for me to join, there was a line that was cut here that cut off the internet to the majority of North Nashville. And so I've been a little out. So I was only having my hand up to see if you guys could send me a recap of the meeting, because I missed the majority of it. My apologies.
Most of it was the discussion about you missing the meeting, but no, we'll be happy to send you a recap. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Councilmember Nash, you're recognized for the last question on this one.
I had my question answered a couple council members ago.
All right. So, Mr. Cooper, Councilmember Suara, I guess I'm not sure if we can put together a synopsis of this and send it to all the council members and see if they're interested, get questions and answers back. What do you think is the best way to proceed? We can always get that out and then come back, and if we need to, we can call everybody back together and see if they're interested in doing something like this. Mr. Cooper, Councilmember Suara.
I think that information, kind of like this PowerPoint presentation, could be distributed to the full council, and just so that they know, here's what we're looking at doing. And then if the executive committee wanted to meet again to take action on whether to proceed, then we can go that route.
Okay. Councilmember Suarez, is that okay with you?
That is okay, and I would recommend whatever we're sending out to also include the fact that this is a $10,000 investment. 10,000 is a lot of money, but for what it can do and the time it will save all of us in collaborating and getting things done, I think $10,000 is a worthwhile investment. So I want that to be part of the conversation as well.
Okay. Councilmember Suarez, thank you and your committee for working on this. And Jeremy and the rest of the IT folks who are involved in this, thank you for doing this for us today. We very much appreciate it. Thank you. Okay, so the last thing is obviously we had a major flood a couple days ago. Councilmember Johnston, her area particularly got hit. Councilmember Johnston, you're recognized.
Thank you. And I'm not going to take a lot of time. I know we're already past our hour-and-a-half mark, but I just first wanted to thank several of you that have reached out to me personally to check on me in my house and offer help for anything I would need personally and also for the district. I'm hoping that everyone understands the severity of what has happened to our constituents.
It's all right. It's been a very long year.
I have people that have lost everything. Truly. 70-year-old man crying on my shoulder because he has nothing left and no insurance. And I don't think that it's getting the attention that it deserves. I've talked with Senator Hagerty's office to try to sort of expedite and push the gas on FEMA. That's a whole process that it's in process, but it's slower than it needs to be. There are houses in my district and several of your districts too that would never have been allowed to have been built by today's standards because they're so close and in these floodplains. And these people literally have been left with nothing. I've got people that don't have a place to stay. So I don't even really know. I'm not asking you really for anything except for just to know that this is for so many people in my district and my surrounding, the surrounding districts as well, that this is just as bad, if not worse, probably not worse, but just as bad as the tornado was. And we've got another round of rain coming tonight. The ground is still saturated. So, you know, who knows what's going to happen to that. I'm hoping that it's not as bad as we think it's going to be. But if you'll just keep some of these people in your prayers, if you can reach out and share some of this information on how people can donate. The HON is working really hard. The Community Resource Center is a great place. Hands on Nashville has some coordinated efforts that are starting this weekend. They've delayed that because of the storms that are coming in tonight. So that's going to happen on Wednesday. There's a lot of ways for people to help. There's a lot of people that need help. And so again, I want to thank y'all for the ones that have reached out to me. I know that Councilor Suara walked through my district yesterday, and so she has seen the devastation. And so thank you, Councilor Suara, for doing that. I know it means a lot for people to see us coming through and know that we're there. So just know that this is a terrible, it's just a terrible tragedy. And I'm working with the federal government. That's what I was with Senator Hagerty to get some money to buy these homes out. There's been over 500 homes that have been identified that are in these floodplains that are what they call repetitive losses. And some of them we have money to buy out, and it's obviously well, not obviously, but it's voluntary. It's not an eminent domain type thing. But getting federal dollars to buy these people's homes, to get them into a place that's not going to repeatedly flood is super important. So if I need your support in that at some point, I would hope that you would help me do that. I also have a resolution that John Cooper is working on to waive permit fees for flood restoration. And I've already talked to codes and I'll be talking to Water too to expedite those permits to get that through the system as quickly as possible. And they're on standby waiting for that. It will be a late resolution. I'm hoping no one will object to that. But thank you guys, and just keep us all in your prayers. That's all. Thanks.
Thank you, Council Member. I've got Councilmember Nash and Councilmember Suara. Councilmember Nash.
Yeah, I just quickly want to second that emotion. It is serious flooding around 7 Mile Creek. I got out Saturday night to go rescue one of my tenants, and I have never seen that much water. And everybody is saying that at least that part of town, it's worse than the flooding in 2010. 7 Mile Creek was a Mississippi River. It was coming down Edmondson Pike. The creek behind the home I have runs east and west. When I got over there, all the water was running north and south. It was all 7 Mile Creek. It's bad over there. So any help you can give and support is greatly appreciated.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Suara.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Thank you, Councilmember Justin. Yes, it's what it is. I put a video out there for one of the stores that was impacted in our district, as well as the family. Same thing with our Councilmember Sepulveda district, also Bellevue. So many people that are impacted, and some of these people were also impacted in 2010. The old man in Councilmember Justin's district saved few things from 2010 and then lost all those things this weekend. So it's very serious, and there's a lot for us to do, and I don't think there's enough out there. I did raise my hand when Councilmember Virtue was speaking about our committee, and I hope that the Vice Mayor will look into creating a similar committee for the flood to be able to make sure that people know what to do, how we can get them help. The tornado committee did an excellent job. I think we need something similar. Most of the people in District 26 know what to do. I was sharing information, they already got it, but there are some people that don't know what to do and where to go. And a lot of them don't have flood insurance. That's the craziest part of it. And so they're all just raising up their hands, don't know what to do, they're in despair. And whatever we can do, please let us do it. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Councilmember Suara, and I wrote that down, and we'll start working on putting something together. Okay. I believe that's it. We're over time. Everybody, thank you for joining us. Be safe tonight. Again, take care of people in your district, your neighbors, and yourself, and each other. And I appreciate everybody getting on the call, and we stand adjourned. All right. Thanks, everybody.